Yes, good afternoon to all of you. I extend my warm welcome to the dignitaries, distinguished speaker of today, faculty, fraternities, and participants in day 3 program of our international FDP. Thank you for joining us today's online faculty development program. Again, I am giving my introduction. Myself, Dr. Lakshmi Punia, Assistant Professor in Department of Mathematics and Statistics, Manipal University, Jaipur. I am hosting today's online FGP again. I trust and pray that all is good with you and your family in this difficult time of the global COVID 19. Today we are having three talks by the eminent speakers. So I kindly request to all the participants to mute your video and audio. If you have any questions during the presentation, you can type them on the chat box and I will bring up after the presentation and we will have a short discussion. Now, without further delay, I would like to invite our first speaker of the day, Professor Farooq Rahman, for his speech. Before his speech, I am giving a brief introduction of Professor Farooq Rahman. Professor Rahman is a fellow of Royal Astronomical Society, London. He is working in Department of Mathematics, Jawadhpur University, Kolkata. He has done BSc from St. Xavier College, MSc in Mathematics from Calcutta University in 1994, and PhD from Jawadhpur University in 2001. He has 20 years teaching and 24 years research experience. He has published 330 research papers in reputed journals, in which 30 are national and 300 are international journals. His total publication citations are 5,800 by the Google Scholar. And in only year in 2020, he got more than 1,000 citations. His H index is 44 and I10 index is 142 according to the Google Scholar. He has been included to the world top 2% scientists in 2020 in the research field nuclear and particle physics. And this list was prepared by the Stanford University, USA. He has also published three books. One is Finsler Geometry of Hadrons and Lira Geometry, the Cosmological Aspects in 2012 by the Lambert Academic Publication, Germany. And second is The Special Theory of Relativity, a Mathematical Approach by the Springer in 2014. And third one is The General Theory of Relativity, a Mathematical Approach by the Cambridge University Press in 2021. He has also completed 8 research projects successfully, in which 4 projects was from UGC and 4 was from DST. Also, he has supervised 29 research students, and in progress there are 10 students who are doing PhD under him. His field of the research is relativity, cosmology, study of topological defects, black hole, wormhole physics, coincident problems, galactic dark matter, theoretical astrophysics, compact star modeling, alternative theories of gravity like active gravity, apart gravity, shadow, accretion, disk, etc. FR with his research collaborators have discovered a theoretical result that would be sufficient to provide an incentive for scientists to seek observational evidence for the wormholes in the galactic halo region. This discovery has been conveyed in most of the leading newspapers around the globe, like TTI, Washington, and Times of India, NDTV, Statesman, The Telegraph, The North Line, Bombay Mirror, New York, Daily News, NBC, and many more. His foreign collaborators are 30, more than 30 collaborators he has done his research work, and also his national collaborators are more than 20. So without further delay, I am welcoming Professor Rahman. Sir, please. Sir, you are not audible. We can see.
Thank you, Professor Lesmi.
Yes, sir. Now
You have
you
said
are
more.
audible.
You have said more what I am. So, okay. So now I will give my. Can you see? Hello.
Yes, sir, audible.
Okay, okay, good, very good. Now, actually, I am thankful to Professor Narendra Kumar for inviting me, rather giving me a chance to say something in this uh, faculty development program. And actually, I have chosen my topic as activation risks and shadow of hormones in this faculty development program because I think mathematicians who knows well numerical analysis and computer programming can do good research in astrophysics, particularly theoretical support of the observational consequences like detection of hypothetical astrophysical objects. I mean, black hole, wormholes, gravastar, neutron stars. So I choose this topic in this faculty development program, and really thankful to all of you uh, to attend this program and my lectures. Now in the weak field design, general relativity is extensively tested and confirmed, but this is not the case for strong field design. Actually, there are theoretical and observational concerns about viability of the theory for strong gravitational fields. I mean, around black holes, wormholes, or neutron stars. Now, determining the parameters of a compact object is made mainly by optical observations, which are quite inaccurate because of the size of this object. Therefore, a good tool for this purpose could be the electromagnetic spectrum of an accretion disk around compact object and usage of shadows. Shadow actually it is a dark region over a luminous constituent. At first, I will give. I will discuss accretion disk, and then I will discuss shadow. Now, accretion disk is a structure formed by diffuse material in orbital motion around a massive central body. And this is an artistic picture of accretion disk. You can see that suppose this is a compact object like black hole or wormholes. If gravitational field is so strong, it sucks the matters, the nearby stars, and that matters start revolving around these compact objects. And this is actually the accretion disk. Most of the astrophysical bodies grow substantially in mass via accretion. Recent observations suggest that around almost all the active galactic nuclei or black hole candidates, there exist gas clouds surrounding the central compact objects together with an associated accretion disk on a variety of scales from 10th of a parsec to a few hundred parsecs. The most powerful evidence for the existence of supermassive objects comes from very long baseline interferometry, that is VLBI imaging of the molecule H2O measures in the active galaxy. This imaging produced by Doppler shift measurements assuming Keplerian motion of the measuring source. Hence, important astrophysical information can be obtained from the observation of the motion of gas stream in the gravitational field of compact objects. Now, accretion disks are flattened astronomical objects made of rapidly rotating gas cloud, which slowly spirals onto a central gravitational body with its gravitational energy degraded to heat. A fraction of the heat converts into radiation, which partially escapes and cool down the accretion disks. And only information that we have about the accretion disks physics comes from the radiation. And we use the term thin accretion disks. Actually, thin accretion means the height of the disks is negligible with respect to the radius of the disks. That means H by R very, very small quantity. Where H is the height of the disks and R the radius of the disks. And this thin accretion makes the study simpler. How? Number one, the mass accretion disks in the disks does not change with time. That is, it is constant. The disk is stabilized by at hydrodynamic equilibrium. Number three, this thin disk has a inner edge defined by the marginally stable circular radius, and the accretion matter at higher radii has a Keplerian motion. And after the supposition of this thin accretion concept, the study makes simpler. Again, we can see that space-time metric components, particle velocity, particle moves in the Keplerian orbits around the compact object with a rotational velocity. That means rotational velocity, specific energy, specific angular momentum are all depend on the radial coordinate. This is simplified the study after the supposition of thin accretion. Since wormholes are a specific type of astrophysical objects, so it has been an active area of research to study the accretion phenomena around wormholes. The accretion incidence around the compact objects is an outstanding investigation for studying the signature of the wormholes versus black hole. Now, what is wormhole? And we know wormholes are the hypothetical tunnels in space-time that join two separate regions. Look at this artistic picture. Suppose this is Earth, and this is the Andromeda galaxy. Okay, if there is just a wormhole in between, then one can go from the Earth to the Andromeda galaxy, taking very small time. Now, it looks like in this figure, this type of, and one can see that it has two mouths, one mouse and second is another mouse, and connected by a throat, and a massive body or a human being can pass from one region to other region through this throat. Now, one can see another artistic picture of wormhole structure. Suppose the region A and B, this is region A and B, this is another region in space-time. And if light travels from A region to B region, it has to follow this path. This is curved path. Due to the presence of gravitational field, the path bent and light has to follow this path. But if you have a shortcut path, that is wormhole in between A and B, then one can go from this region to this region, taking time very, very less than that light takes. And definitely this structure is a hypothetical object, but recently I have shown that the galactic halo possesses some characteristics needed to support a wormhole. And I think this is the first example of possible existence of wormhole in the galactic region. And after the publication, Science News wrote a review on this paper. Later, I have shown theoretically that the dark matter in the galactic halo region yields a wormhole type structure in the central part of the halos, galactic halo. And this result is an important complement of the earlier results, and thereby confirming the possible existence of wormhole in the most of the galaxies. And after the publication, this discovery has been confirmed in most of the leading newspapers around the globe. Theoretically, this study confirms possible existence of wormholes in most of the galaxies and provide a theoretical platform to seek observational evidence for the wormhole. So to search observationally this specific type of astrophysical object, that is wormhole, one can study accretion incidence around the compact object or studying the signature of wormholes. We will give some outline of this study in this lecture. And to study the accretion, one has to know some parameters. I just mentioned that parameter. There is surface density, there is anisotropic fluid sources, the torque. Is the torque. The most important physical measurements is the radiation flux. There is radiation flux, and the energy and angular momentum flux, etc. Now the mass conservation. This mass conservation yields the m dot equal to constant. That is rate of mass accretion rate. Actually, mass accretion rate is constant, and angular momentum conservation yields this equation. And after using all these parameters, one can find the energy flux. Energy flux, which is given by this formula. And another important characteristics for this study, which is known as efficiency, which is given by this formula. I just go quickly because these parameters are study only for study. They needed for only for study. Okay, another very important thing in this study. In steady state, the Dick's accretion model, it is argued that accretion matter is the thermodynamic equilibrium. And as a result, radiation produced by the entire Dick's surface can be recounted as a perfect black body radiation. As a result, the energy flux can be written in terms of effective potential. That sigma is the Stephen Boltzmann constant. Also, one can use the formula for observed luminosity. And additional redshift factor by this formula. The thin accretion disk is made by the time-like particles moving in the stable circular time-like geodesics. These time-like geodesics around the compact astrophysical objects are very significant for theoretically as well as experimental point of view, as they convey the information about the compact objects where very strong gravity takes place. Therefore, to study the stable circular orbits, we take the metric, most general metric in this particular form. The X is stationary and axial symmetric geometry. And since we are interested to find the geodesic study, so from this metric one can easily calculate the Lagrangian. This is the Lagrangian. And using the Euler-Lagrangian equation, we have some constants of motion, E and L, which is known as specific energy and specific angular momentum. And using these equations, Euler-Lagrange equation, one can find the 4 velocity component. And using the first integral of geodesic equation, one can ultimately find the equation of motions. One can, otherwise one can say this is the conservation equations also. And right hand side is the effective potential. And for stable circular orbits in equatorial plane, the time-length geodesics satisfy these conditions. That is, these conditions are needed to find the stable circular orbits. There is r dot equal to 0, r double dot equal to 0, and r triple dot is less than 0. And using this criteria, one can find the restriction on V effective, that is effective potential, which is like this, which is like this. So to get stable circular orbits, this condition should be satisfied. And in all this condition, one can find the angular velocity, specific, one can find the specific energy, specific angular momentum, and for marginally stable circular orbits, one needs the second derivative of effective potential equal to 0. And since the effective potential is a very complicated quantity, so I try to find it, that is find the stable circular orbits graphically. Now, for our wormhole structure, we take it particular form of the metric, that is the solution of the wormhole space-times, which is given by this. This metric has a very significant, what is the significant? This n significant as the redshift function, and b is the shape function, and this metric represents a wormhole matrix. Some criteria should be satisfied. One is the redshift function should be finite, and shape function should be satisfy some condition which is known as flight tear-out condition. This is known as tear-out condition. So these conditions are to be satisfied to get a wormhole structure, and we take the solution like this. And these solutions satisfy all these conditions to form a wormhole structure. Now using our solutions, wormhole solution, we find the parameters. At first, we calculate the effective potential, then specific energy, specific angular momentum, angular velocity, etc. Now, to find the marginally stable circular orbits, since a P effect is very complicated quantity, we find it graphically. Now, we plot the second derivative of effective potential with respect to r coordinate, and one can see that where this second order derivative cuts the r-axis, that points are the marginally stable circular orbits, radius of the marginally circular orbits. And for different parameters, one will see that we get different radius of marginally stable circular orbits. Now all the parameters, definitely these are very complicated quantities, so I plot all the parameters in terms of radial coordinate, and one can see that the angular velocity, one see that angular velocity is decreasing when we go far from throat of the wormhole. Then we see that angular velocity is decreasing one, but specific energy and specific angular momentum are increasing one with respect to r coordinate. That is, when you go far from the throat radius, one will see that the specific energy and specific angular momentum are increasing. The most important part of this study, not most, the important part of this study, the energy flux. One can see that energy flux after some radius it is increasing and takes a maximum, and after that it is decreasing one. Similarly, effective temperatures have the same nature of flux, energy flux. Luminosity also same structure. It increases at first, it is increasing, and after that it is decreasing one. For different parameters, I plotted different parameters. Now, the most important part of this study, draw the accretion, the image of the accretion disk. At first, we draw the accretion of phosphid radius. This is the image of accretion disk for phosphid radius, and this the image of accretion disk of Kerr black hole. This is Schwarzschild black hole, and this is Kerr black hole. And for our wormhole structure, we have plot the accretion disk for a wormhole, and see that the accretion disk which is quite different from this star black hole. To see the structure of this image, one can distinguish whether the astrophysical object is a black hole or wormhole. Now up to this I have stopped here for academics. Now we'll start the shadow of wormhole. Now what is the shadow and how can we study the shadow of wormhole? I will discuss. One can recognize the shadow of black hole or wormholes as the result of strong gravitational lensing, generating a dark spot in the sky of remote reviewer. It's an artistic picture of shadow. The shadow is actually the optical loop exhibited by the black hole or wormholes when there is a source of light from stars accreting close, etc. around it. This manifestation has been investigated theoretically as well as observationally by the application of very large baseline interferometer, that is BLBI techniques, at sub-millimeter wavelengths for studying the shadow cast by supermassive objects, including the ongoing ambitious project involving the compact astronomical ratio radio source Sagittarius A in our galaxy center. And being a sub-millimeter wavelength, this technique significantly reduces the interstellar scattering and may allow to see beyond the compact synchrotron emitting region around Sagittarius A. Since this region is expected to become optically thin at sub-millimeter wavelengths, also BLBI experiment can reach a resolution of the order of angular size of the gravitational radius of Sagittarius A. The space-time geometry could be determined through the analysis of the shadow in the vicinity of photon sphere. Compact objects are cause extremely local deflection of light and can bend light by arbitrary large scales, causing the formation of light rings, which are circular photon spheres, possessing distinct phenomenological signature in terms of both electromagnetic and gravitational waves. And since this shadow outline depends on the gravitational lensing of nearby radiation, its proper surveillance can provide evidence about the parameter as well as space-time geometry around the black hole or wormholes. Light propagation, that is the null geodesy, in the compact object, that is wormhole space-time, can be perceived into two ways. Number one, trajectories which escape to the distance observer and such that they are captured by the compact object. Therefore, a black region appears in the viewer's sky, creating a shadow. Now, since we are interested in the shadow around the wormhole space-time, we take the wormhole solutions, that is metric of the wormhole solutions is given like this. This is redshift function, this is shape function, and take the redshift function like this, and this is shape function. And for this choice, it is actually this TO class of wormhole, and this satisfies all the criteria to be a wormhole. So our solution is very much justified to represent a wormhole structure. And since this interesting point is this, our solution is rotating. Our space-time is rotating space-time. Therefore, this space-time should have some ergosphere, and one can easily calculate the ergosphere by this equation. This GT equal to 0 for our solution, and we can find these solutions for ergosphere region. And we draw the ergosphere region, and one can see that is the spin parameter. 1.1 in the solution. This solution A represent the spin parameter. So if we increase the spin parameter, one can see that the ergo region is increasing. The ergo region is increasing when we increase the spin parameter. Now, when a wormhole is between a star, this is our wormhole. This is a star, and this is the viewer, that is the observer. Now, when a wormhole is between a star and a viewer, the light comes to the viewer after being deviated by the gravitational field of wormhole. So the light follows this path, there is curved path, because due to strong gravitational field of wormhole, the path of the light is bent. Therefore, the path is following this curved line. However, certain portion of the photons originated by the star end up falling into the wormhole and not able to reach the observer, giving as a result of dark sector in the sky called the shadow. The boundary of the shadow apparently is determined by the unstable circular photons orbits. In order to find the unstable orbit, one requires to study the geodesic configuration. Again, we need the geodesic configuration to study the shadow. And for our wormhole, one can easily calculate the Lagrangian, because to study the geodesic, one needs to know the Lagrangian. So from our space-time, one can calculate one can construct the Lagrangian, which is given by this one. And using Euler-Lagrange equation, one will get equation of motions, of constants of motion, I say. Also the core velocity component. And using the Hamilton-Jacobi method to determine the geodesic, we use this equation where S is the Jacobi action, and to solve this equation, we use the method of separation of variables, to solve this equation. And using the separable form, one can find these two equations, where Q is the constant which is known as Carter constant. It's a very important part, Carter constant. And from classical mechanics, one can easily find the parameters PR, P theta, etc. And all the quantities can be written in terms of T and R, where R is given by this expression. For simplified our expression, we just write R, capital R and capital T. And these are the Hamilton-Jacobi forms. These are separable forms. Now, we interested to find or to draw the shadow of this wormhole. For this purpose, we use two parameters. These parameters are known as impact parameters by giving quantities as L and specific angular momentum and specific energy are known quantity. Q is the Carter constant, is a known quantity. Now, with this quantity, we construct two parameters, xi and eta, which are known as impact parameters. The two regions of space-time are joined through wormhole. There is a tunnel-like structure. Let us assume that the photons are coming from the stars towards the wormhole, this place in between the observer and stars, and emanating one region, and no light source were remaining in the neighborhood of the throat in the other region. In the first region, the possible orbit of the photons around the wormholes are: number one, orbits entering the wormholes and passes through its throat, and second, disperse from the wormhole to infinity, and a remote reviewer will capable to observe only dispersed photon from the wormhole. However, photon captured by the wormhole will form a dark patch. This dark region detected on the bright background is known as shadow of wormhole. Now, how to find the shadow of wormhole? Now, to find the shadow of wormhole, that is the dark region in the viewer's atmosphere in the presence of shiny background, one will start to find out the critical orbits that separate the escaping and falling photons. Actually, our prime motive is to estimate these critical geodesic or unstable circular orbits. In order to acquire the boundary of the wormhole shadow, one needs to study the radial motion of the photons around the wormholes. The critical orbits distinguish the dispersed and captured photon. A slight disturbance in these critical values can change it either to escape or to a captured orbit. As a result, the critical impact parameters describe the boundary of the shadow. Thus, boundary of the shadow is determined by the unstable circular photon orbits. The most important part in this study, the boundary of the shadow is determined by the unstable circular photon orbits. So, to find the unstable circular photon orbits from the equation of motions, the criteria is like this. That is, v effective equal to 1 and first derivative is 0 and second derivative should be less than equal to 0. And using the criteria, using this criteria in terms of R, one can find the criteria can be written in terms of R because we have already defined the expression for R. And from this one can easily calculate the impact parameter, that is eta and xi. Now, for the set of unstable photon orbits, above sets of equations express the critical locus of the impact parameter. In other words, these equations express the boundary of the shadow in the impact parameter space. However, for true observations, the remote viewer will see the apparent shape of the shadow in his sky. Here, the viewer's sky is the plane passing through the center of the wormhole normal to the line linking it with the viewers. And in terms of impact parameters, one can find the coordinate alpha and beta. And these celestial coordinate alpha and beta are actually the apparent perpendicular distance of the shadow image as observed from the rotation axis from its projection on the equatorial plane respectively. Now, in the alpha beta plane, this equation defines the part of the shadow boundary formed by the unstable circular orbits which lie outside the throat. Here shows that the shadow of wormhole for different values of the spin and throat size. Note that for a given wormhole size, the shadow shape deviates from the circularity as you increase the spin parameter A. Look at the second picture. The shadow of wormhole for different values of spin and throat, and compared to previous one, here the given spin, the shadow becomes more or more circular with respect to the increase of wormhole size, the throat of the wormhole size. It is more circular. Now we have compared our result with the Kerr black hole. The shadow of the wormhole is solid red line. The red line is the shadow of the wormhole, and dashed blue line is the shadow of the Kerr black hole. Now one can see this picture. If you increase either spin or throat size, the shadow of the wormhole starts deviating from the Kerr black hole. If you increase the radius, throat radius, one can see that the deviation from from Kerr black hole and this shadow from wormhole structure. So start deviating with the increase of the wormhole throat. You can easily see that. If you increase, the difference is very, very prominent. To see this difference, one can detect whether the astrophysical object is a black hole or a wormhole. And finally, one can consider the size and spin of the wormhole using the results M87 observations. For this purpose, one can use the average angular size of the shadow and its deformation from circularity. The region between two black dashes vertical lines indicates the spin range 0.5 to 0.95. Screen is from 0.5, this 0.5 to 0.94, and thus the result consistent with the M87 observations. Thus, a wormhole having reasonable spin or throat size can be distinguished from a black hole through observations of their shadows. Thank you. Thank you. Would I stop sharing? Hello? Would I stop sharing?
Yes, sir, please.
Okay. Now any question or any interaction, you can proceed. I think I have finished within the time, stipulated time, isn't it?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you. So, any questions or any queries you can ask?
So no questions? Okay.
It seems.
And thank you, sir, for your knowledge. Talk in this subject.
Ma'am, some problem. Punya ma'am, some problem in
Thanks a lot for
sound, I think.
accepting our invitation. Now, without further delay, I would like to invite our second speaker, Professor Sunil Kumar Khan. Yeah.
Punya ma'am, some network. Yes, now it is clear.
It is okay
Now
or
it's
not,
clear.
sir?
Yes, it is now clear.
Okay. So, thanks, Farooq sir. Thank you so much for your nice talk and accepting our invitation. Now, I would like to invite our second speaker of the day, Professor Sunil Kumar Kha, for his speech in our Day 3 program. But before his speech, I want to give a brief introduction of Professor Sunil sir. He has done BSc in Electronic Science and then MSc, MPhil and PhD in Antenna Theory. He is a professor and director in IQAC, Department of Physics, Material Science, JP University of Information Technology, Solon. He is also adjunct faculty in Department of Electrical and Computer Engineering, University of Dayton in 2012, 13 and 15. He is a postdoctoral fellow of RF Lab Institute for Plasma, DAE Institute, Gandhinagar, Gujarat. His fields of specialization are electromagnetics, microstrip antenna design, and microstrip devices. He is a life member of PSSI, MRSI, and chair Himachal chapter, and also he is senior member of IEEE. He has completed 2 government-funded projects and he has published more than 50 research papers in reputed journals. He has also 25 years of teaching and research experience. Please, sir, kindly grace the occasion.
Thank you for your introduction. Am I audible?
Yes, sir.
Okay, as this is a faculty development program, and we know in faculty development programs, we try to reach out to all faculty members, research scholars, and talk on certain topics which are very interesting, so that if we are interested in any topic or anything, we can spread that out with our students, with the researchers with whom we are interacting always. Now, I will share my PPT. Is it visible?
Yes, sir. Your
Okay.
PPTs are visible.
They are visible?
Yes, sir.
Okay, when we talk of optical fibers, you will say these days there is a sort of revolution in communication and internet. Geofiber cables are there. When we think about these optical fiber cables, I wanted to make it a bit more interesting. We will discuss what is this optical fiber and how we should get interested in these designs, because they are providing us a lot of speed. Previously, whenever we used to have internet connection, we used to look for that rotating circle for buffering and other things. Now 10%, 15%, so that we download certain things. Now the speed is to such limit that it takes a fraction of second to get download, to view. And in lockdown, I think internet was a savior to all, because sticking at your home doing nothing, it is for all people. They needed something to see, something to do. So internet was a very good thing. So when we talk about optical fibers, everybody knows what is an optical fiber. But when we go deep into it, I will not go into the details. I will have a generalized topic of what's an optical fiber cable and how do we view it. Because optical fiber cables can be anywhere. It can be under the earth. It can be on from one pole to another pole. It can be laid on the surface. It can be under sea. Now, I came across few pictures on internet. If we see this, these optical fiber, they are submarine systems which do exist. We never thought of that these optical fibers will be there, available in whole of the world. They are connecting one continent with another continent through a cable system which is under sea. And this is 2023. This is the assumption that by 2023 we will have all high density cables connecting all the regions. If we see, it goes back to the Greenland area where we will have all connections, all data. And you will be very happy to know that Mumbai is one of the busiest hub in optical data storage. We call it internet underworld. And in India itself, Railways has got the biggest cable network, fiber network in India. That is why, and that is how our ticketing system, information system in the railways is moving so fast. Now, till this time, we have around 14,500 cables under sea. This is a single link which connects east coast to west coast of USA. You will see it is going directly. It is a one round of optical fiber cables. It goes from US to Europe, then to Middle East, from Middle East to India, India to Japan, Singapore, Japan, and back goes to US. This is an existing structure of an optical fiber cable. Now, what is an optical fiber cable? It is a simple glass. It consists of a very thin glass, you may say a pipe, whose dimensions are 8 micrometers to 120 micrometers. Now, it has got the central portion of material of a particular material which we called core. The dimensions of core range from 8 micrometers to 60 micrometers, while as the outer range, where I think your cursor is visible, this yellow portion is called cladding. This core is made up of fiber, glass, or any other material which supports the propagation of wave. Actually, everything goes by this wave. And before explaining it, that the basic principle of optical fiber is what we studied in class 8th, 9th. that when the light moves from denser medium to rarer medium, beyond a certain incident angle, the wave moves back into the same medium, which we call total internal reflection. So what our aim is, why in core is a high density material, that means its refractive index is more. Cladding has got less refractive index. So we push the wave in the core at such certain angle that when it touches the cladding, the incident angle is more than critical angle. So it comes back into the core. So actually core carries the whole information or the wave. Now, the father of optical fibers, he may not have got the Nobel Prize. On his work, what he did, there are 4 persons who got Nobel Prizes, is Professor Narendra Singh Kapni. Unfortunately, he died this year, and he is the person who, during his PhD, made light to pass through glass, and he is called the father of optical fibers. He is named as the 7 unsung heroes of our century who did pioneering research and development in optical fibers. And you'll be happy to know that he did his master's MSc from Agra University, then did his PhD, and he was civil servant for 1 or 2 years. Past this, it used to be IAS civil services. But for 2 years after that, he went to do his PhD in UK. And during his PhD, he proved experimentally that light can pass through glass fibers. And he is basically known one of the founding fathers of optical fibers. So optical fibers have a connection with India, which we are proud of. Now, it started in 1930 actually, that we can transmit light. During 1960s, lasers were introduced as efficient light sources. But the experiment Dr. Kapni did, it was in 1956. So there was advantage. They used lasers in 1960s. Now they use glass fibers with excessive optical loss. So they changed the materials. They used other materials in fibers so that light travels through it. Now, you can see that whenever we talk about optical fibers, I have told you that the cladding, which is the uppermost part, it is a system which supports the transmission. We can have only core. But we know if we suspend core in an air, the density outside will vary. So your critical angles can vary. So the combination of these two, core and cladding, gives us the transmission through an optical fiber. What are its advantages? The advantages is it is very light in weight, it is low cost, and it is very smaller in size. Second, nothing moves outside the fiber. That means there is no emission. If there are other sources like radio waves alongside the fiber, they cannot enter into it. So there is no EMI interference. There is no crosstalk. It is just like, we can say, normally I give this a crude example to our students. Optical fiber is just like a water pipe. So from one pipe, if there is no leak, no water can enter into this pipe, and no water can move out of this pipe apart from its designated position. And when the wave moves through it, so there is no sparking, and there is compatibility with the solid state device. That means you can launch an optical fiber with the source itself. You can create a source at the starting point of an optical fiber, so it is compatible. Wideband, we say here, this wideband is in terms of the slotting, how much information we are passing through it. We cannot call it an exact wideband, but we know the limitations is that it is just like I tell you in this crude example, it's just like a water pipe. Just say half an inch water pipe will have that much amount of water, and 1 inch water pipe have that amount of water. So the dimensions will determine the bandwidth of an optical fiber. Disadvantage is this, that you cannot push more than the required into it. There are not certain specified. Now last year they have specified standards, and there is one this called, if you use this in nuclear devices, there is a radiation darkening in this. This is a simple optical fiber structure from 8 microns. Here's written 20. I have quoted it from some other source, but it is 28 microns. 8 micrometers to 60 micrometers is core. There, this is core optical fiber. There is a, sorry. This is the central portion, it is core and cladding. Then there is a tube. After this tube, there is a material which gives strength to this fiber because it is made of optical fiber is very thin. So we need to protect it. So if we say a cable in an optical fiber will have optical fiber at the center of it, there will be a tube inside, there will be an optical fiber, there will be a strengthening membrane, Kevlar yarn strengthening membrane, and there will be an outer jacket. So a cable will have these 4 parts, and there are normally types of cables, that is single mode fiber, step index. The first one is when it operates on a very single wave. That means you can send only one information. Mode is number of, basically when we explain mode in electromagnetics, we say it is the arrangement of electrical field, magnetic field like this. But when we explain this to a common person, mode is an information. Single mode means that only one information will travel through this. Multi-mode, step index. Step index is, that means whole core has got same material. Multi-mode means more number of informations will travel through this optical fiber, but they will not overlap with one another. That means they will have a fixed path. Then there is this graded index fiber where the refractive index changes from center to cladding, and it is normally used as a multi-mode fiber. That means more information can go through this optical fiber without any interference. That is the only part where we stress that they will have a different specific path. They will not cross one another path. Now, when we lay out, you have seen geofiber moving. So when we make a system of optical fibers, what are the parameters which we think are important? The first one is we select a fiber. I will give an example that when we make a fiber, can I use I want to tell you that just 1 minute, give me 1 minute. Is this Jamboard visible to you? When we make an optical fiber, when they design, there are a lot of machines for designing an optical fiber, but optical fiber is made just in the form, which is made from a very simple technique. जैसे आपने देखा होगा ना जलेबी जैसे बनती है. It is just like that. What we do, we have a conical structure over here. The dimension of this conical structure, the diameter of this conical structure is over here 8 to 50 micrometers as we required. Now this cone is put in a bigger one. And the dimensions of this cone are from 40 to 120 micrometers as we depend. Now the core of the material, if it is a glass fiber, we put liquid glass, we molten glass in this structure here, and the cladding material from this side. Now when it comes out in the form of a wire. They say we push it just like jalebi, so it will have core at the center and cladding on the outer part. Then we dry it up. When we dry it up, it is optical fiber. Now, why was I telling about this? Because there are certain losses associated with optical fibers. Like if there is certain amount of water into it, there is a single molecule of water into it. So for particular wavelengths, it will absorb the wavelength. So we will not use those wavelengths. Though there are different losses in optical fibers. They may be due to hydroxyl ion, due to efficiency, or due to scattering. But when we select the fiber, we keep things in mind. There should be no losses. Second, I have got single information, so I will use a single mode fiber. I have multiple informations, I will use a fiber which supports multi-modes. Then area of operation, where I am going to lay it. That I have marked it red because I want to stress on this. Area of operation is whether I am using undersea or in earth, on the ground. Then second part comes source selection. What is the frequency? What is the efficiency? And final is what is the detector selection? Now, two basic, so this is basically a layout. This is optical fiber. We say Fi. You say this is a source, there is a modulator, there is a link. Now there is a repeater. So this is optical fiber. This line, this optical fiber, this is the most important part into it. We have got a WDM method or single line, multiple lines. Now these are two basic sources which we use. Either we use LEDs, light emitting diodes, or we use a laser diode. We call it injection laser diode. These are two basic sources which we use. We use two basic detectors in receiving this optical fiber. One is PIN diode. It is PIN diode. That means it is a positive semiconductor, intrinsic semiconductor, and a negative semiconductor combination. And APD diode, that is avalanche photodiode. These are two sources and detectors. Now, what is the cable? Here I wanted to stress. So it should produce minimum stress. It should have a very high tensile strength. That means it should not break. This is second property. Third property is that it should have immunity to water vapor penetration. आप पानी में भी इसको डाल सकते हैं. It is under sea. It is in earth. So it should have immunity to that. It should have a stability to properties over temperature range. So if the temperature increases, it should not change. Final, one more thing. It should be easy to handle and it should be easy to install. It should have a low acquisition, installation, and maintenance. Now, I was going through some stuff on this. The people who work underwater for optical fibers, it is compulsory to them that they retire after 10 years only. Because it is a very high pressure zone underwater. So they work there for 10 years, then compulsorily they are retired from this thing, that they cannot work under this because it is that much of strain over there. Now, this is a representative optical fiber cable. That means the central part, which is over here, it is optical fiber. Then there is an isolated place and there is a membrane, this crossed. Between this optical fiber and this jacket, this is not hollow. It is, we call it isolated filler, isolation filler. We use certain materials, gels, so that this optical fiber, if there is a pressure, it moves left or right without any hindrance in this. And above this strengthened membrane, there is one more jacket that is called protective jacket, so that there is no cut, nothing enters into this. Because optical fiber, when you bend, the optical fiber may move left or right. It should have space. It cannot be fixed. Now, we use a buffering material. Here, we use a buffering material, this isolation filler or gel. We use a buffering material which is soft substance around the fiber to isolate it from radial compressions. That means if there is a compression on this membrane, but it does not reach over here because there is a gel inside it. It is soft gel, or it is a bit, if it is rigid, it's a bit hard gel, or it is soft, but it is that soft that it moves left, right, up, down as per this own choice. Now, when we say this, we made an optical fiber. Is it the same optical fiber? Is it the same structure which we use in all the three places? No. We design an optical fiber depending on where it is laid. If there's a layout on in air, that means like today's we have got GeoFiber or Net Plus, they use optical fibers under earth, in water, or on surface. Now on surface and under earth, we use same cable. But in air and underwater, we use a different cable. Now, this is in air. It is suspended from pole to pole. There are these 5 things, 5 circles and 2 dark circles. These 5 are basically optical fibers. The structure which I have shown you. So actually there is a socket inside where there are 7 slots. Out of those 7 slots, 5 are optical fibers. And these slots are filled in a structure which is filled with gel. There is a plastic liner around it, and then there is a strength membrane. And above all, there is a protective jacket. So when you see an optical fiber suspended from one pole to another pole, it does not have a single fiber. A cable consists of 5 optical fibers, and there are 2 power conductors. These power conductors, these are basically metals. These black spots are metals. Because when you suspend optical fiber from one pole to another pole, it may bend. It may not be straight. So in order to give it strength, in order to give it straight and it should not suspend, they use 2 cables of the same dimensions of optical fibers, which gives them strength from one pole to another pole for a fixed distance. These all fibers are in gel. Now, if we see under earth and on surface, the difference between these two is that when we use optical fiber under earth, we replace these 2 aluminum slots, these 2 black aluminum slots with 2 optical fibers, and we use an aluminum sheath over it in order to give it protection. And over aluminum sheath, we will have a strengthening membrane. Then we have plastic jacket. That is the only thing which we have here. We have aluminum sheet and protected jacket. Now here we will have our protective jacket. There will be an aluminum sheet, and above aluminum sheet there will be one more plastic jacket. Now, because in earth we do not need strength for suspension, or on surface we do not need, so we replace these 2. Why do we use this? We use this for one thing. Whenever optical fibers are laid, all 7 are not used. We keep 1 or 2 optical fibers without use. Because if there is a collapse, if there is a damage on one optical fiber link, we do not want to replace whole link. So where there is a joint, we connect it to the other one which is not used. So if one optical fiber is damaged, so we keep 1 or 3, 1 or 3, maximum 3 we use 4 only at a time, and we will keep 3 not working, because if there is a collapse in one of the optical fibers, we will use that one at that time, so that we don't have to replace the cable. It happens with the suspended also, and it happens with on earth also. Now, when we say representative cable designed in undersea transmission, we use copper clad steel wires are used both to conduct electrical power through the cable and to provide cable strength for the harsh installation and repair environment. It should be noted that the presence of electrical power in the cable can provoke defensive behavior from sharks and fish in certain installation areas. So that is why we have protect. This is the actual optical fiber which is in sea. In sea, we do not use multiple optical fibers. We use a single optical fiber. It has got a protective filler. Above it, there is a copper-coated steel wires, and then there is a protective jacket. We use electric current between the terminals where there is a possibility of shark attacking it. So if we see that optical fiber was like this only, this was an optical fiber. But when I use this optical fiber at 3 different locations, I use a different condition. We use this optical fiber in a different setup. So that one thing, it is protected from environment. Second thing, if there is a damage, we don't have to replace it. we use another slot into it. And third, it gives me support for communication. There are other interesting things about it, that we have got splicers, we will say joints, connectors, couplers, and grating. Now, most of you must have done experiments in optics in your undergrad level, and you may have seen there are a lot of things going on. When we say connectors, couplers, insertion loss, return loss, these parameters are associated with losses. That how much insertion loss is that if I give input power, 100% power, how much of it will turn at the another end, whether it is reaching 100%. Return loss, how much is reflected back. Now, there are two figures which you will be seeing over here. Maybe when you see an optical fiber connector, it has got a very different steel design and it looks very beautiful. Or when you use an optical fiber cutter, it appears to be a very good thing. But actually, it uses the traditional method of cutting. You must have everywhere, you must have tried. If you take a pipe, plastic pipe, you want to cut the plastic pipe into two parts. You never do it in perpendicular way. You will never lay a pipe and then cut with a knife. You always bend the pipe. At the pointer of this bend, if you use a knife, ordinary knife, it will cut it in perpendicular way so that your both optical fibers are perpendicularly cutted. So this traditional way, when designed in a device, becomes an optical fiber cutter. This is what we use in optical fiber when we cut the optical fiber. We don't cut, we push. There is a device, we push optical fiber into it, it bends. And at this, if you say, it strikes it at the perpendicular distance and divides it into two parts easily. So we splice it into two parts. We connect it in two parts. Second is, I have cut it in two parts. Now I want a connector. It's a device. We have got a lot of things into it. There are screws and other things. But what is inside? Inside a connector, there is a material, elastic material. If the dimension of optical fiber is suppose 10 micrometers, so in this elastic material, we make a hole, capillary hole, which is less than 10 micrometers, a bit less than 10 micrometers. Then we push this optical fiber from both ends into it. जैसे आप करते हैं, आप सॉफ्ट कोई चीज ले लीजिए, उसको छेद कर दोनों साइड से पाइप डाल देंगे तो वो एकदम से टाइट घुस जाता है उसमें, both sides. We use the same procedure in optical connectors. We use a soft material. The dimension, we have a hole through and through of this optical fiber where the dimensions are less than the optical fiber. Then we push optical fiber from both sides. It goes straight. One, it is aligned. There is 100% alignment. Second, it matches perfectly. So there are no alignment losses. If they exist, they are very low. There is no misalignment or angular alignment, no lateral alignment, no horizontal alignment, and losses are very less. So what we need in optical link design, we basically need 2 or 3 things. First, we should know what are the instruments which are we using. Optical fiber. Then we use optical fiber connectors, splicers, other things. All things should be first, loss of everything should be first calculated in order to make an optical link. Now, remember one thing, when we talk of optical fibers, we do not calculate loss in centimeters, millimeters, or like this. We calculate loss in kilometers. The dimension for optical fiber loss is dB per kilometer. So we can imagine that losses are so less. Losses in comparison to other links, transmission lines, are so less that we sometimes call it a lossless medium. But I don't think it is a lossless medium. Now, in optical communications, we are using fourth generation WDM system. We started with 1975. We are in the fifth generation now. Beyond 2000, we have got 2004 and above, we have got WDM systems. Now, when we talk of this WDM system is simply a multiplexing system and a demultiplexing system. Wavelength division multiplexing. That means if there are 10 or 15 things, I want to send 10 informations from 10 different place sources to another place, I combine all these through a single channel and we multiplex it. That means wavelength, suppose every system has got a wavelength lambda 1, lambda 2, lambda 3, lambda 4, like this, lambda 10. So in this single line, first lambda 1 will travel, then lambda 2, lambda 3, and lambda 4, like this. Now this WDM system, you must have seen it. Have you seen it? And most of the people say, no, we have never seen it. But if you have done BSc with physics, you all have worked on WDM device in your optical fiber lab. I choose this topic in order to link the higher things which we are saying to the thing which actually we did. See, we all must have done prism experiments. We all must have done gratings experiment. A WDM device is nothing but a transmission grating. We have seen that whenever we use a grating experiment, white light when enters the grating, it is deviated into different paths. We get different colors. Similarly, on a prism, when white light enters it, it divides it into all parts. The same material is used in a WDM device in an optical fiber network or anywhere else. We have got all wavelengths coming to in one line, one by one. When they are pushed on a grating, they take different paths. So at different paths, we have got different devices. And we know optics holds the principle of reversibility. That means if we keep all the devices at their particular places, their light comes on the diffraction grating, it will combine into a single white light. So WDM device, which is nothing, which is presently used, is nothing, which is a simple either a diffraction grating or a prism. We call it multiplexer. That means we have a grating where all colored lights fall on it. It combines into a white light, then it goes to demultiplexer. That means again a diffraction grating. When it strikes the diffraction grating, it deviates into separate wavelengths. So we use a single channel in order to make all light to travel through these optical fibers. So this is a simple WDM transmission. Now, when we talk about this internet speed and other things, we started with, I started with floppies, the bigger one, the smaller one. Then for me, when we were thinking of, we never thought of 1 GB speed. For almost 10 years, I worked on 240 KB speed, or the fastest I got was in 500 Mbps. My RAM was 500 MB. That was the fastest slot which I worked on first. Now, presently, the speed of my computer, when I started using it, is far lesser than what I use in my mobile these days. This is the evolution of internet and other communication systems. Now, when we say there are certain, I told you that we lag in optical fibers. They have started. It is basically, I think we may have some protocols. We have combined IEEE 802 protocols, but previously every person used to have his own protocol. Some people use SDH, some people use SONET, optical carriers and other things. And they thought of speed of 40 GB per second was the maximum they thought of. And presently, we are talking about, when we started it, our capacity was less than 100 Gbps, and now it is around, WDM experiments have shown it is 1 TB, more than 1 Tbps. And similarly, when we talk of channels, sorry, here till 2000 onwards, our bit rates were around 10 to 100. Now our bit rates have gone to 1 TB per second and more. And now we have not written it because this is evolution. Evolution is up to the level where from it there is modifications. So evolution was up to 2000, and after that we have got different setups, different methodologies. So we are talking about links in optical fibers on 1 TB per second. So this is a simple, may say, network where we have got global wide area networks. Now this figure I have put in this way. We should remember one thing: whenever we use optical fibers in C, we use a simple step index fiber because we send one information at a time. When we use optical fibers for long distances on surface, we use graded index multimode fibers. This geofiber uses step index multimode and graded index multimode, because in the local area network, as I told you, the losses are in per kilometer. We calculate losses per kilometer. It means the maximum losses in 3 optical fibers are associated with step index multimode fiber. So in LAN up to 10-15 kilometers there are no losses. So when the optical fiber is underwater, it's a simple step index fiber. When it is in local area network or wide area network, it is multimode graded index fiber or multimode step index fiber. This is how a system works over here in optical cross connects. With this, I conclude. If you have, I think I was a bit fast. If you have any question, you can ask.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much for your fantastic lecture on optical fiber, a useful topic in our daily life. It was interesting and also knowledgeable for all of us. And once again, thanks a lot for accepting our invitation to deliver this
I
talk.
know, Lakshmi, Dr. Lakshmi, I have got this interest, no doubt. It is a sort of related to my field. I gave this topic because most of us are presently with new education policy. We always tend, I am in the Department of Physics. Fortunately or unfortunately, I have been a part of applied physics type. So I am a bit of cusp between engineering, and most of us, as you know, most of us teach in technical subjects. So it is our duty, I think, it is our duty to basically fill the gap which connects, as per new education policy, the traditional method of sciences with the application oriented things. That is my opinion. So that we have got this thing that if I'm a mathematician, I should know where I will use maths in order to solve my day-to-day problem. That was my aim, and I hope I have worked a bit on it. And thank you for your cooperation. If there is any question or from any side, please, you are free to ask.
If there is any question, please put your query before sir. Hello participants. Any query regarding this topic? This was a very important topic which is directly connected with our daily life. And
Okay.
we are waiting for minutes, sir, and then we can conclude. Any participant who have any query regarding this important topic of the day? This is very good topic and directly connected with our daily life. I think there is no query
Yes, Vishal.
and no chat is regarding. So I think we can conclude the session. So, Vishal, you have any query? I think there is no chat. Also in any chat,
Vishal, I
no
think, is
question
there.
written. Vishal.
I
Hello,
think he is there.
Vishal. Do you want to put some question?
Ma'am, he has, I think, left. Okay.
Okay. Okay, then no problem. But what knowledge you have given to all the participants? We have gained some knowledge about the optical fiber. So now at this moment of the time, I am concluding our today program, and we will meet again tomorrow between 4 p.m. to 6 p.m. for some other talks by our eminent speakers. And this is a very good FDP which is going on, and our daily our speaker who are giving their speeches daily are very good. So thank you for all the participants, thank you for our speakers, and thank you everyone present here.